I need the headphones?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, namaste, and welcome back to Disha in Australia. Today we have a very special guest on board with us, Daniela. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, going all right. Hopefully you can hear me properly. Yeah, exciting. First time.
So, is this your first time on a radio?
Yes. I mean, like, I've done like an interview before, but I feel like this is more high tech to what I did
Yeah,
last time.
no, that's all right. Um, So, today we are going to speak about international student experience and also your journey from all around the world. So, how do you feel about being from all around the world and being here today sharing your experiences?
It is exciting. Just having, I've been in a couple of parts and it's good to share how you experience it. And also, I guess you bring your own cultural expectations to what you see outside. But I think it's good to experience as many places as possible. It keeps you more open minded.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, to begin with, can you give us what you do, where have you been, and all your history, everything?
Sure. Okay. Let's do a bit of a blurb. So I'm originally from Chile. I was born in Santiago, which is the capital. And I moved to Australia in 2000 and at the end of 2008, and I've been here since. What I do here currently at ANU, I'm a PhD student. I research the connection between brain behavior and personality, which I do love, but not everybody's cup of tea. So I do that part time, and I also work for a research network on the connection between the effects of climate change on human health. So a bit of everything, and whenever I have time, I also help with other neuroscience research, and I play volleyball. So that pretty much sums me up.
No, that's really interesting. So it's almost been a decade since you're in Australia.
Yeah, and during that decade, I have been like to a couple of places just traveling, so it's been pretty fun.
Oh, that's really exciting. So, how does it feels to be in Australia for the past so many years?
Well, look, to be honest, and because I've always been in Canberra, which is every time I talk to people, then you live in Australia, and it's just like, oh, what is Canberra? I thought that Sydney was the capital, but I've always been in Canberra, and that first year was a shock, thinking that everything closes very early, and it was very difficult to get used to the city itself. But I don't know. No, I pretty much love it. It's pretty good. Yeah.
And that's the same cultural shock I experienced. Everything closes so early.
I was just like, I was ready for everything, just almost like open 24/7. And then it's like, oh, what do you mean 5:30 closes? But anyway.
No, that's the same thing in India as well. So I remember when we first met, you were talking about your experiences in the US, in Australia, and also from the place you're originally from, San Diego. So what has been the change, because you have not been a tourist in these places, you have actually lived there? So how does that experience sums it all?
Yeah, so I guess if I go for the very first place where I was born, so Chile, it's one of these things like you have been, that's where you're born, and then you get used to things, and then it's not until you get out that you realize, oh, things are slightly different. So I guess my first experience going out was when I was living in in Boston. So I was living in Boston in the US for 6 months, and I was 17, so I was having the time of my life.
Oh my God.
Like, I was in exchange, so I didn't have to worry about working, which is quite a privileged position to be in. So I was only learning English, and it was great. But there were things that I was not used to in respect to seeing international people. Chile is actually quite close, not now, but back when I was in high school, you could only see Chileans, or people from Peru, and some Chinese people, but nobody else. And then I went to the States. I was like, oh, look, I can see Mexican people, I can see Colombian people, Venezuelan, and then all the spectrum, and it was fantastic. But then you start seeing divides, which I noticed that, Latinos were hanging out with Latinos, white people were hanging out with white people, black people with black people, which I thought it was not that integrative. But anyway, regardless of that, I had a blast. Then I went back to Santiago, and that was a shock again, because then I had to get used to, it's just Chileans now. But that was fine. But then it was very different than coming to Australia. A part of me was sort of like expecting that segregation, which I think is it still happens here in Australia, but I didn't find it as obvious, or at least not in my group. So yeah, it's different things. You can always talk about the specifics, but I don't know, it has been more positive Australia that, I don't know, my impression of the US. Sorry.
So, were there any cultural shocks that you experienced along the way in all the different parts of the world?
Funnily enough, when I was in the States, I was experiencing cultural shocks with other Latinos. But then I figured out that the way I talk was funny in Spanish. Everyone was making fun of my accent. I thought I had a really neutral accent in Spanish. And then I started talking to people from Venezuela and Colombia and Peru, and they're like, you guys talk very funny. You talk very fast and slang. It's kind of like, I keep telling people now, like, we're the equivalents of the Australians of the English world sort of thing, with a Chilean accent. I learned other words in Spanish that I didn't know existed. So that was that. I guess the cultural shock in the States was as well food. I find it very like rich, like coverage, and sizes were huge.
Yeah, I've heard
And
about it.
I was just like, what is happening? Like, I went into the stage because I saw that everyone was running in Boston. I was just like, I want to be one of these, really healthy people. So I had the craze for like 3 weeks, and then I just started eating, and I felt like I gained so much weight. It was so easy to gain weight. But then, other than that, I think it was okay. I was 17. I was enjoying the life. And then Australia, the culture shock was a time. The accent really got to me. I spent 6 months just learning English in the States, and then I moved to Australia, and I cannot even understand what people are saying in the news. And I was just like, I made my parents spend so much money on me, and I can't even understand what they were saying. So I felt so bad. So I was like, not the spiral. That was that. Well, time driving on the opposite side, that was fun. But what I found liberating here in Australia was that people, or at least compared to back home, people don't really care what you wear. Like, you can wear whatever, and people just like, oh yeah, that's all right. Whereas like back home, if I'm wearing like really short shorts, I need to worry about getting catcalled, or people looking at me funny, or just like judging. It's like, you look ugly, you should probably present yourself a bit better. So you always have to look presentable for jobs. Otherwise, people don't take you seriously, sort of thing. And here seems to be, people are more relaxed. I mean, to the point that people are walking barefoot, which is still not okay. But things.
No, I definitely agree with that perspective, because that was a huge cultural shock for me as well. Because when I first moved to Australia, like, I came just from high school. So like last year when I came to Australia, I was just 18. So just like straight up high school. And in India, it's like a very big culture that we call anyone who is elder than us with like a proper respectful title.
We do the same. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like very big seniority complex, so like if it's your professor, you don't call them by their name. It's like sir or ma'am, and like everything. And in Australia, it is actually like people get offended if you call them by sir or ma'am, which was something I got offended for, because I couldn't, like, it was my literally first day in uni as a uni student, and the teacher was like, do not call me ma'am, call me Mary. I'm sorry, but like,
No, I had the same. I was just like, I forgot about that. I've been here so long. So, and again, I had this twice because then I realized that back home I went to a private school, which is again very privileged. I'm sorry. And then we got used to call our teachers not even in Spanish, in English, Miss and Mister. Then I got to uni back home. And the first time I called, like the professor, like Miss or Mister, and everyone just started bullying me. It was just like, who do you think you are, sort of thing. Just called them like teacher or whatever, like, in a Spanish professor or whatever. And then, so I was just like, okay, fine. I won't call them Miss or Mrs. whatever. And then got here, same thing, first class. It was chemistry, I remember distinctly. And then he was the same thing. Don't call me Mr. DeMichael. Call me Tony. And I was just like, please. And he was like about to retire as well. So he was quite elder. It's like, how can I call you Tony? I have like 30 years difference. Like, this is not right.
This is not right. And I just, there's just like we're at the same level, and I don't feel it.
Like, no,
we are not friends.
But like, even in English, I feel like there's not the equivalent for you. Like, I think you have to rely a bit more in your interpersonal mannerisms rather than language to be a bit more respectful. And like, I get it and I appreciate that to some extent, but also, I don't know. I have that also with my mother-in-law. I cannot call you. Like, it bothers me to use you. I feel like I should be using a different title.
Yeah. That's the same. We don't call elder people you.
I know.
It's like a different term.
I would be scolded. I was just like, you don't have enough. Like, we're not the same level. You shouldn't. Yeah.
And then also like dressing up, because I remember when it was my first presentation in uni, I dressed up like proper suit. My mates, they come up in shorts.
It's like, what are you doing?
In a tee, in a shirt. And I was looking at them, and then I was looking at myself in a blazer. And I was like, no, this is not happening. We have a presentation. I mean, I know it's only 5%, but it's a presentation. And then I started like really, really formally, like, hi, how, like, not hi, like, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and stuff like that. And they're like, just like,
it's like, hey, good day.
Yeah, sort of thing. Good day. So we researched that and stuff. Yeah, but that's really fun. But that's kind of a very big cultural shock which I see here, because it's like everyone is more on an equal level rather than a hierarchy based thing or like a seniority complex, which is fine, but it sometimes feels too much.
Like, because there are like pros and cons to all of this. I like the idea that, if we're working, we're on the same level. I think that's great, but I don't know, sometimes you need that separation, the hierarchy. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because it sometimes contradicts your values, because you have learned that since you were born, and then all of a sudden there's like this country telling you this is not a part of our values, and you're living in this country.
It's kind of like it's just trying to come to terms that you're not being disrespectful, but you have been taught for so long that is disrespectful. So it's just coming to that as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Also, like, so you have been to so many places. But do you think that Australia is the place you would want to live for a longer duration, or like rest of your life, or is this like...
I really like Australia. I think in Canberra now. I'm just very used to Canberra. I think if I were to live somewhere else, it would be kind of like for a short period, maybe hopefully. I get to do a postdoc, and usually how that goes, you would do it like at a different institution. Sometimes it's overseas. But it would be for a short period. I think I see myself coming back to Australia. I don't know if I'll go back to Chile. I'm too used to now to living here. I've been here for over 10 years. So, I just like the Australian lifestyle. So, it would be a bit difficult to emigrate again to a different country for a long period and get used to the culture and everything again. I feel like I would clash. And I would miss the coffee. That every time we go to different places, I don't know, I'm a bit of a snob with coffee. And Japan was surprisingly bad. I'm sorry. No offense, but I was just like, oh no. So coming back, it was the biggest thing. It's like, let's just get some coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's right. When I first moved to Australia last year, I just felt like, why am I even here? Because it was such a different culture. Everything was very, very different, and just getting out of high school and being in a different country, it was too much.
I think that makes a huge difference. So I'm not gonna speak for my sister, but you know, we moved as a family, the four of us. So it was incredibly hard to move the four of us. I can only imagine someone moving by themselves. But I felt like I had an easier time coming to uni because you can see more international students at university, whereas she had to go to high school. So she was the only international person there. So she had to get used to, you know, the English on one go. Didn't have an option, plus learning everything in a different language. It was quite hard, and I could see that she was not having a great time. I mean, not me for that matter, but I felt like I had an easier time because you know we got all the international students got together, but I felt like she didn't have the same, or it was a bit more difficult for her. So yeah, it is hard.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like, yeah, I definitely agree with the perspective that uni is, I can imagine uni is a little easier to get in because we can find people from your own tribe, you know, and there's like so many clubs and committees and stuff that promotes international students and like the communities that are made for the particular country or stuff, which makes the process a little more easier. And then there are people that are also on the same page. So when I moved, I wasn't the only one. I know a lot of my friends who moved along, and like we all met right here, but initially we all moved from our houses all by ourselves. So that was a big thing. And yeah, when I was pretty new here, I just like didn't really like being here, and I just wanted to go back. But like straightforward 1 year after I've moved out, and it's been more than a year now, and yeah, I just feel like no other decision could have been better, because 1 year in Australia has taught me more than what a 4 year uni life in India could have. And I really, really enjoy being here.
Yeah, I feel like if you have the support network to get you through that the first week, I feel like it's not so bad in the sense like, oh, everything is new. It's just like, let's enjoy this. But like after that kind of like honeymoon phase is gone, the hard reality starts setting in, and then it just drags for I feel like a whole year.
Yeah.
And then eventually you start like finding your footing. But like if you can find a community or like safe connections, I think that definitely helps. For me, that first year was my family, because I don't like making friends. Like if it were up to me, I would be like just doing my things. And then the only people I was talking to like during my first year of uni was like, you know, lab partners for during like chemistry or biology. And that was it. And then eventually the second year or the second semester, I went to you know, like a science resource center, and then I started meeting more people, more international students. Eventually I met my husband there as well. So everything worked there, but first couple of months awful. But but now wouldn't take it back.
No, that's absolutely right, because when I was pretty new here and it was my 4th day, I got a very bad allergy.
Oh no.
That lasted for 3 weeks. And I was so much into like tears, like I really wanted to cry, because I was crying actually.
You would have.
Yeah, and I was away from my family. There was no one to take care of me, and I was like going to the ANU medical center, and the doctor's telling me that, oh, we cannot detect what you are allergic to, but keep trying.
Oh my god.
And I was like, this is the most this is so rude. Like, you just have to tell me what am I allergic to. And I still remember that.
Or anything like
no, they didn't do any tests. They were like, first they were like, you're allergic to green apples, maybe. I was like,
maybe. Great.
I ate green apples all my life.
Yeah.
How am I allergic suddenly in Australia? Then there was this like, you're allergic to sunlight?
That's bizarre.
And
You would have figured that out pretty early on if that was the case. Oh my god, I'm sorry, girl. But
so
yeah.
I was like, none of your things actually make sense to me, but okay. And then but it was the thing because the Australia sun is really really harsh,
Yeah,
so
that was
it
interesting. Yeah.
aided the allergy, but it wasn't my allergy. It was because I didn't know that the sausage that I ate was made of beef, and that was my first time in my life having beef. And
Meat
it's
allergy sensitivity.
yeah. So I got to know that it was beef and not the apple or the sunlight.
But you had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Gosh.
But that
God.
was really but that experience also taught me that you have to like figure things out by yourself, and there's
a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because especially I guess it depends if you don't have the language. So I really admired my parents in that sense, because like I was the only one that had the opportunity to just learn English for 6 months. My dad did the same, but only for 3 months, and there's only so much you can pick up, and he did that when he was well in his 50s. So it's really difficult to pick up a language that late, and then half the time, like you have to point at things and try to figure out everything by yourself, and eventually you get over the hump. But there's a lot of that. No one is like taking you by the hand. It's just like, this is how we do things in this country.
That's true.
And then getting used to as well. I don't know, back home my dad always used to ask about discounts when you were buying something, and then it's just like, no, this is the fixed price. And it's like, okay,
Yeah,
you can haggle only so much.
Yeah, that's true.
Before people just get angry. It's like, no, it's this, or just walk away.
Yeah. And like one of the thing is, so like in India we have this MRP thing written at the back of everything. So like there would be a price tag there, and there's like no price tag here. So I just kind of feel like people can sell it at any amount. So at one shop it's $7, at other shop
really
it's $3.
that.
Yeah, because so like in India we have a maximum retail price, which is MRP, which is on the back of everything that we sell.
Yeah.
So the maximum price you can sell is maybe like 200 rupees. So that's it. You can sell for cheaper, but you cannot sell for 201 rupees.
Whereas here, I feel like the closest thing is that like the recommended retail price or whatever, but it's not in the products. It's just
and I kind of feel like, so what if I go to a remote area and I take a lot of your groceries and I put my prices? So the Coke that you buy for $2, I'll sell it for $7.
Yeah, no,
it's a remote area. You can't get it.
No, because you can ask for like a markup price of like transport
Yeah.
and whatnot. I really thought about that.
Yeah, that was one of a very interesting observation I had.
That also in the States, the tax. I forgot it's not included in the pricing. That did my head in for the longest time. And it used to drive me nuts. Because, like here you have something marked as like, it's $2, and then you go to the register and it's $2, or unless you're paying FPOS and they charge you like the 4 cents or whatever. But in the States, it was, it was $2 or $3, and then you go to the register and it would be like an extra dollar or so because of tax. Or amount of cents, and then it would depend on the state that you would go to. So I remember I managed to get used to the prices in Boston. And I was like, okay, I need to account for this many extra dollars when I'm buying. And then one weekend we went to New York, and then it was different again. And I was just like, God. Then we went to another part. Then it was just driving me nuts. It's like, just tell me what to pay, and then I'll do it.
Yeah.
But it's like having to do maths in your head, and the tipping as well.
Yeah.
Tipping
culture in America.
Well, even in here. So back home, you're not expected to tip.
Yeah.
You just do it if you have exceptional service, and then you just give the waiter some sort of money, not a particular 20% of your bill sort of thing. In the States, there is like that. And then sometimes you have different percentages. And then here, there's not a tipping culture, but you can see like in the cafes all the time, like the tipping jar, which I still don't understand what it is. I don't know if it goes it's spread equivalently like with everybody. Just think it's a bit unfair if someone has more shifts compared to others. But I remember the first time we were having, I don't know, we're just having like some laxas or something like that in Sydney. And my dad left some like money, and the lady was just like, oh, what is this? So she was quite thankful.
Yeah.
But then you go and do that in Japan, and then they will actively return it to you. They will not accept anything extra. It will be kind of like quite disrespectful to give them tips, sort of thing. So, and then Japan is quite interesting with money and the way that they will not receive money from your hands. You have to put it in a little tray and then give it to them, and then they'll give any change back in the tray. And it gets displayed in a particular way, which I find is quite cute and it's quite nice. But like you don't.
And that's an interesting thing I'm learning if I ever go to Japan.
It's lovely. I liked it. Take cash though. We were just like, oh, surely we can just get by with credit cards, and then no, we had to remove cash like quite often. So at the convenience stores of all places. So yeah. Yeah, it was great.
That's interesting.
But Japan is not that far from here. So if at some point you have a chance
9
to go,
hours from Australia.
Yeah, it is great compared to like almost 20 hours to go back to Chile.
And even like India seems a little proximity. There's a proximity, but still it takes me 30 hours.
Does it actually?
Yeah, because there's no like a direct flight most of the time. So I have to like wait in Singapore for 7 hours. And then there's like there's one direct flight that's 12 hours, but it's usually all booked out.
Oh god,
so hard to find. Only Air India does that.
Wouldn't be cheap, I'm assuming, either. Wouldn't be cheap either.
No. It's the most expensive one out there. So I'm rather happy staying in Singapore for 7 hours and exploring the Changi Airport.
Exactly.
It's really nice. I love Changi Airport.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think at some point, like we were just like in a stopover. I can't remember when. We're just watching a movie, and I was like, "This is fantastic."
No, I just go to the Changi Airport, go to the Bacha Coffee, get the coffee and the croissant, and I'll be sitting in the butterfly park, seeing the butterflies.
See, I missed that last time. So next time I go to Singapore, I'll just go there because like it sounded great. I saw it, I was like, how did I miss this?
Yeah, and it seems like you're in a mall. The Changi Airport has everything that you ever want in the world. It has Dior, it has everything, and I'll be like, that's a luxury mall.
Like next time, I think that's what we're planning. We're planning to go to Sri Lanka at the end of the year. I haven't been there. My husband is from Sri Lanka, so I'm actually really excited. And we planned a long leg in Singapore. So it's just like make sure to do
it. It
that.
is very fun, and you can also go to a free Singapore tour for 3 hours if your layover is more than 6 hours.
Fantastic, because that's exactly what we have. Okay, and great, thanks. Great tips.
You should go. I mean, I missed it out last time because I saw it after like my 4 hours were passed out, and I saw that it was written free Singapore tour here, and I was like,
oh my god,
I'm gonna cry.
Okay, I'll put that in my list because that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's what we're thinking of doing anyway, just to step back because we had such a long layover. But if it's a free tour,
we'll
take it.
It's a free tour.
That's great.
It makes you explore the entire city in 3 hours, which is pretty good. So you see basically everything.
Hey, anything free, I'll just take it.
Yeah, I love that. So like coming here, it's also a case that we see a lot of people that are from your own home country and meeting them here. So how has your experience been with the people from your own home country?
Okay, I guess it's just how honest do I want to be here. So being from Chile, and I was like, obviously no one from Chile is going to be here in Australia. I thought I'm going to be a minority. And then when I got here, I realized, I'm not a minority. There's a lot of Chilean people. It's just like we're a bit more dispersed. A lot of people came here during the military coup in Chile in 1973. And that's as far as I'm going to leave it because I was not born.
Yeah.
And I feel like I only have certain opinions about it. And one of the first advice that we were given were like, do not hang out with other Chileans. And I was just like,
oh my god,
wow, are we that bad? Which maybe I haven't had any bad experiences meeting other Chilean people. I find them lovely. We have heaps of Chilean friends, and we pretty much hang out every other weekend. Like there was like a big party like last weekend. But it's not that Chilean. We have friends from Colombia and Venezuela, and so on. But like, you know, it was kind of like harrowing to hear that it's like you should stay away from your own people.
Yeah.
I was just like, why? And I think it's like other people have experience, you know, like you're trying to help people from your own country to see them, help them through, and sometimes in that process there has been a bit of bad handling. I wouldn't say proper backstabbing, but sometimes has not been a great experience. I think my parents had a bit of that. They had in their business when they were starting. So, you know, it makes you a bit weary sometimes of like you have the best intentions and sometimes it just doesn't work. But again, I'm speaking externally. I haven't had any issues. If anything, I've met another person from Chile and we're playing volleyball. So it was like fantastic. So it is great, but you know, like you can have on a spectrum and it always depends on what, you know, interactions are you having. I'm only having like social interactions, so I haven't had any problems, but it seems like when it comes to business, it is a bit more, as with everything, I guess. It's just not a feature of Chilean people. Just need to be a bit more wary that these things can happen. But yeah, so that was the first thing I got told. And look, to be honest, I don't know if it was the best advice, because you know you stay in a society that you're trying to assimilate, and then you're actively being told do not hang out with people from your culture. And I feel like now I'm missing things and I'm forgetting things that we used to do back home. So we make a point of celebrating the Independence Day like in September and things like that, but you don't get to, I don't know, do culture just within your family. Sometimes you need like bigger celebrations and then hang out with other people to remember, oh, this is how we are, sort of thing, where just like we act like this, we're a bit more open, we do these things. So yeah, I guess somewhere in the middle.
It is so interesting that so many of the things that even I heard were so similar. And because like if I think about it from my perspective, it's like it's just a thing that South Asia and South Asian culture is very, very different from Europe or like any culture from the Australia itself as well. You know, like different people, different cultures and stuff like that. Even South Asia has so many differences within South Asia. So like hundreds and thousands of cultures within South Asia.
Yeah, exactly.
So like when I came here, it's just like a saying that Indians always say that do not bond with Indians because they are the first one that are gonna pull you down.
Yeah.
And now the thing is you're coming to a new country where the first advice you're given is to not bond with Indians, which are the only people that understand your language, understand your culture. So stay away from them. Then who am I left to contact with people who are very new, whose language I barely understand? And the people that were alien to me before I came here, because I never traveled abroad before I came to Australia. So it was completely a new country, new people, everything new. But the thing is, no matter how hard people say that do not bond with Indians, it's like you can't resist that because
Like,
you cannot, like it's just your people, you know.
And look, sometimes it just doesn't come necessarily out of like, I don't know, what I had an experience was like I wanted to help somebody. So I used to work at Specsavers, which was handy because I'm very blind. So I used to get glasses. So anyway, so I remember like this couple came and they had just arrived in Australia and they didn't have that much English. And then I was like, okay, I'll be there. I will be the translator. I was trying to help them in Spanish. So from that sense, it also, I don't know, I feel like if you can help with language barrier, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And then that's how you get to meet them. So next time they'll come to the store. It's like, can you please help me here? And it's like, yeah, sure, of course. Like, so yeah, it's like there's also that element.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I would say when I got the allergy, the first person who came to help me was an Indian.
Yeah.
And that was apparently a relative that I never knew existed. And so it's kind of funny, but it's just a thing that I feel like it's just a different set of, and a strange world where everyone lives together but also kind of does not want to live together, but cannot also live without each other, but also does not want to live in harmony, but also lives in harmony in some way.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be a sweet spot, because if you only hang out with people from back home, then
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult to assimilate to Australian culture, and then you become quite siloed, and then you keep doing things like what you would do back home with the good and the bad, and then suddenly you're inserted into Australian culture, and then you don't seem to fit. You don't feel at home, and then you have the opposite end where you're just like, okay, I'm not going to hang out with anyone from back home, and then you become very Australianized. And then you start missing things that you used to do, and then you forget things. So I don't know, it has to be a sweet spot there somewhere.
I absolutely agree on that part. Sorry.
Yeah.
Were you saying something?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
So yeah, I absolutely agree on that aspect, because I feel like if you're only being friends with people from your own home country, you do not get the chance to explore and learn different cultures, which is kind of a drawback, because you're like traveling 10,000 miles to be in a different country, paying hectic international student fees.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
then
God. Yes.
and then you're
Jesus.
not learning something else other than what you learned in your own country. I feel that's when you're wasting it all.
It is a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's just great. I mean, you take the good and the bad. Again, not everything is going to be rosy, and I'm not trying to paint that picture at all. But I don't know, it not necessarily if it makes you more resilient, but it makes you understand other people's point of view. Funnily enough, I was just thinking it's not necessarily a cultural shock, but differences in the way we act. Because my husband is from Sri Lanka, and only a combination that can happen in Australia, right? Chile and Sri Lanka. But the first time I saw them eating with their hands, I was like, this is quite handy. But back home, I would get scolded if we would eat with our hands, like actively, like someone like hitting you in the hands. It's like, you don't do that. You have to eat with fork and knife, and then that's how you do it. So the first one was like, this is interesting. This is new. And I remember my sister-in-law said, I was like, sorry, I'm eating with my hands. And I'm just like, why are you sorry? But like, I get it, because maybe I had, my face was just like, oh, you're eating with your hands. And maybe she had the urge to apologize for it, which I felt very bad if that was the reason. But, you get used to those things. So back home, that would be like a huge no-no. Only children eat with their hands when they're learning to eat. After that, you're not supposed to do it. And then, you have the really formal, the three, utensils. You start from outside to the inside, and then doing all this sort of stuff. My mom went to like a really fancy back home. She used to work for congresses, and there would be like these fancy dinners, and then she had to learn how to use the utensils and all the orders and things like that. And then she was like, I had to learn this quite old, and I want you guys to learn it a bit sooner. So we had kind of like a practice, like fancy dinner back home, like when it was like, okay, this is the entree, so then you eat with these utensils. Once you're done,